providing us with an interesting insight into the niche world of beauty shows for dogs that look like celebrity chefs. But before that, we once again join the princes of procrastination on the Failing Writers podcast.
Right.
Let's begin then.
Here we are again. Is that enthusiasm? Is that too much? Have I gone too
Tommy,
far?
are you all right, mate? Are you okay?
Yeah.
Is it because you think we're going to ask you the question? Is that why?
Bloody ask the question, I dare you.
Okay, I will do then. Have you written anything this week, Tom?
Yes.
What?
What?
Yeah, I have actually.
What have you written?
Fingers in loads of pies, me. Writing all sorts of stuff.
I've got a confession to make, Tom.
What?
You know, because I know one of the things that you wrote, you began to write the book that Joanna Penn suggested.
Yeah.
And I only just got round to reading it today. And I apologise for that. I have been genuinely really busy. Yeah. And I sort of then forgot about it.
It's fine.
But it's really good.
See why I was excited?
It's really good.
I wondered why you weren't that excited.
And because I was really excited about it, as you could probably tell from me WhatsApp message. And then I just got sidetracked.
Yeah. Well, that happens.
But read it today, and I got really excited again. Yeah. And we should definitely try and crack on with that.
It'd kind of write itself, wouldn't it? As well, with three of us just chipping into it.
The only slight problem is, I feel like we'd have to go back through all the podcasts and listen to them.
Yeah, there's quite a lot.
Well, you say that, but I listened just on a whim. I don't know why. I was out for a walk listening to stuff.
Walking on a whim.
And I'd run out of stuff to listen to, and I thought, I'll listen to one of ours. It was really funny. It was really good.
It's nice, isn't it, when you forget
I'd forgotten all about it.
Yeah.
And I thought,
it's nice when you forget
really
what
good,
we said.
Really good.
And then you
I
hear it.
actually laughed out loud at one point. I said something really funny.
I forget what we've said almost as soon as it's left our mouth.
Yeah, so anyway, that was one thing I've been tinkering with. I didn't bother doing anything else on that this week because I just felt empty and just people hadn't bothered reading it and there was no enthusiasm. So,
well, do you know what I read? I read the index.
You read the first page that was just a place. You read the placeholder bit rather than the content. That's good. It's good.
But I think I did mention previously that was very
good. To be fair to you, you did.
You're right.
You did. But I've also been writing the love story that we.
Oh, well done, Tom.
Yes.
How far have you got?
I'm over word count and it needs editing and changing, and I'm not entirely sure it's a good idea, but it's the idea I've had. So we're gonna try and refine it. Yeah.
Have you read it to your wife?
No, I haven't. It's not finished.
Right.
Finished yet.
But ready for consumption.
So I've been busy. I do know a few other little bits and bobs as well. Actually, I seem to have been. I've got into a bit of a mojo state. When you just find.
Yeah, you have been busy. You've been booking people.
Yeah, booking guests
for the podcast.
And
that's good.
Moving stuff forward and
productive little time, isn't it?
And boom, yeah. What about you two?
Dave.
Yeah. Well, I've had an idea.
Hey, that's a good start.
That is a good start
for the romance story, and I've written a little outline of what it is going to be about. But only because I started thinking about it and came up with a really terrible idea and thought I've got to do something better than that. And then I come up. I'm happy with the idea. I just have to actually write it. Well, how many words did we say?
Just 500.
We were going to do.
It's
500.
It's really short.
Oh,
really short.
Yeah.
Bang it out. Bang it out.
500 words of romance. Piss.
It's funny, isn't it, how really bad ideas can sometimes be the catalyst for good ideas. It's like you have to have them. You have to go through the horror.
I think sometimes the bad ideas, you can chuck them out a little bit too quick as well.
Yeah.
And because there is a grain of idea in there. Might not be the whole idea, but there is a germ.
Or it might just be a bit different.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes that's a good thing.
Yeah, it can get you going. Because I came up with a line. It was something like, of all the places she dreamed about meeting her ideal man, the sexual health clinic wasn't top of the list. Was like, and I thought, that's not a good opening line for a romance story.
I don't know. It sounds very Dave Baird.
I was going to say before as well, though, the thing is, and the great thing about what we do on the podcast in terms of these tasks is that we get to set our own rules as well.
That's true.
If it was a competition you're entering or something, you might think, I don't know if I'll try that. Do you mean if there was write a romance story, this, that, the other.
Yeah.
Whereas it's for us. So if you want to bend, if it goes off piste a bit, I'm saying this to defend my story. This is completely separate.
Does yours
So
say-
if it's a bit different and it's not a typical romance, I think that's a good thing.
Are you
That's what we
saying
should be aiming
that yours
for.
is set in a sexual health clinic? Is that what you're
Well, it's
saying?
not anymore, no.
No.
Oh, no, you said
But
that.
it's funny, innit? Because I think it was me and you, wasn't it, John? We both had romance in the that
Oh, yeah.
competition that we did, and I remember thinking at the time it's
Yeah.
quite sort of restrictive. But actually, having those little things, you've got to get this word or this bit of action or whatever, really helps to sort of start you down an avenue, doesn't it? Whereas with this, just romance is a really sort of wide umbrella, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's interesting how our two pieces weren't massively dissimilar.
It
as
is,
well,
yeah.
in terms of like theme and
Yeah.
I don't know, sort of a lot of things really.
Shame the judges didn't see it that way.
Let's not.
Let's not go there.
Let's not go there again. No.
No. John, what have you been writing this week?
Well, I have been writing another love story, but I don't think it's going to work for the 500-word thing because I'm already on 1,500 words. And it
That
ain't
is
coming
long,
down.
that is longer. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
still
yeah,
going.
that's
It's
longer.
still going.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've got to try something else.
Yeah,
for that.
yeah, for a short.
Quite an involved romance.
But nice
that,
to
isn't
get going on another story and
Is it good?
and
Like you
cracking on it.
liking it?
I
Is
like it. Yeah, I like it. It's sort of different to stuff that I've written before. Definitely,
God for
very
that.
different. It's a bit like it's almost a bit fairy tale-ish.
Yeah, because Talking Trees was so normal, wasn't it? Really, it wasn't in the realms of Oh well, that's good. Then we've
We've all
been
done something, haven't we?
doing
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
doing something.
Little
And I think I want to do NaNoWriMo again.
Oh yeah, and do this new story that
Yeah.
you had an idea for that you're not going to tell us.
No. And I finally blocked some time out next week, so you can ask me next week. Tom, you said you were going to work on your Chad book.
Oh yeah.
Have you done anything on that this week? Because you said you were this week. So I'm actually going to do that. So there you go. I've said that out
Very
loud.
good.
Self-imposed deadline. Something will be happening on that. Enough time has passed, I think. You know, when you just want to leave something
Yeah,
so you can kind of attack it fresh again rather than feeling
Yes.
like you.
that's good. That needs doing.
Yes.
Yeah,
It-
yeah.
it-
So good.
Yeah.
It needs to be published.
Yeah. Well,
Tom.
yeah. Publishing's the way forward, isn't it, Dave?
Absolutely.
Speaking of which, a friend of the show has
We have friends?
an acquaintance of the
Oh,
show.
yeah. Right.
Of our most regular guest, actually. Tim Craig, who helped us judge our flash fiction competition last year, has just released his book, which is full of flash fiction stories. So
Oh, we should talk to him
thought-
about it.
he's here right now.
What? How's it going, Tim?
I'm all right, thank you.
Good.
You guys?
Yeah, we're good.
Good.
Nice to have you
Thank
back.
you very much.
I
indeed.
think our most regular guest
Yeah,
now.
our most guesty
Yeah,
guest.
turn up to the opening of an envelope.
What are you saying about our podcast?
So yeah, Tim, we asked you on because you are now a published writer, a published author,
Yeah.
and you were on Twitter today, book in hand, showing it off, an actual physical printed copy.
Did it just arrive today?
It just arrived today. Well, my advanced copies arrived today.
Come on,
yeah.
then, describe that
nice.
first holding in hand moment.
It was pretty amazing, although the postman was trying to force them through the letterbox. So I had to kind of stop, rescue them, because I don't think that was the way they were meant to arrive. So yeah, just opened up the package in the kitchen and it's like, it's real.
So tell us about the book quickly. Just tell us what it actually is.
Yeah, okay. So it's my debut flash fiction collection. It's got about 40 very, very short stories, and it's called Now You See Him, and it's published by Ad Hoc Fiction. Yeah, that's it, really. Very, very short. The stories are very, very short. Someone on Instagram tonight said, "Yeah, I bought it. I'm heading to the States, so I bought it for my trip." I'm thinking they'll have finished it by Christmas.
40 stories is how long?
It's 40, but they're only a page long, you see. So,
Yeah. So how long you been working on them? How long has it been brewing?
Well, I've been writing these for 3 or 4 years, but when they said to me they would publish a collection, I suddenly realised that I only had maybe 20 or so that I actually thought were worthy of publishing, and I needed about 40. So beginning of this year, I just knuckled down to sort of replace the ones I didn't like with stronger ones.
Just imagine you're on the phone to them going, "Oh, brilliant!
Yeah.
How many is a collection?
Well, exactly.
How many would that be?
Exactly that. It's sort of intimidating.
So this is like a best of album attached to a new album.
Well, it's sort of best of, but it's also my first one. So yeah, and it may be my last one as well.
Not if you've done it properly, Tim, where you just put all the fillers in the middle. You hide them, don't you, in the middle?
Don't tell everybody. Yeah, there's definitely a sort of a technique to that. I mean, I was asked by the publisher, so what was your thinking about the order of these? And it's like, does anybody actually read a collection of stories like this, all the way through? I never read a collection of short stories.
Yeah, no, it's a dip in and dip out thing, isn't it?
It is dip in and dip out.
Unless you've bought one for a flight to America. You've got like 12 hours to fill or whatever.
Exactly.
Pass it around. The entire cabin could probably read. Do you mean they pass it round? You could.
They might do. They might leave a couple around. You see, that's what people do. I know that people who have small print runs like this will sometimes take their book and just slide it into the shelves at Foyles or Blackwell,
take a photo,
or Waterstones or something. Just leave it there and hope someone sort of picks it up.
Yawning like a 12-year-old trying to put his arm around a girl. Exactly. Just put it on the shelf there.
Leave this here.
Giving away all the signatures.
Oh, did I sign that? Have you been practicing your signature?
I just signed the first one to my wife.
Oh.
It's dedicated.
So Now You See Him, is that a title of one of the stories? Or
It is, yeah. Now You See Him. So the idea is sort of now you see him, now you don't, which is a story about a character not dissimilar to my dad, who's sadly no longer with us, who had a propensity for disappearing when the conversation got a bit heated or whenever he was required. So it's sort of now you see him, now you don't. So yeah, now you see him, and the cover's got a sort of half portrait of him done by my friend Alan Coulson, who's a wonderful portrait artist. And so yeah, I'm delighted with the cover. It's the best bit.
And of course, we feel thoroughly vindicated for choosing you to judge our flash fiction competition last year. Now,
that's so lovely. I really enjoyed that.
I assume that was one of the main reasons you got the attention enough to be able to publish, wasn't it?
Well, that's what it was.
This guy must be a big deal.
Yeah.
So where can people get the book? Where can they get the book?
The book is available from adhocfiction.com, where you'll also find a selection of other excellent books of short fiction.
And so you can pre-order now. Is that right? It's not actually.
Well, it depends when the podcast is going out. You can pre-order until the 1st of July, and then you're ordering. The pre is gone at that point, and then you're paying full price.
All right. So by the time this goes out, you will be ordering for real.
Yeah, then you're ordering for real. If you order now, you get 25% discount.
Post ordering. Yeah,
but that's too late for you because you're only hearing that now. So unlucky, listener.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a kick in the teeth for the listener, isn't it?
Yes, you've missed out.
Sorry about that.
Already missed it.
But if any of them happen to have pre-ordered it by chance, they will be feeling very smug right now. Very smug.
That's true.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well done, mate. It's brilliant.
Well, absolute best of luck.
Yeah.
with it,
Thank you
Tim.
very much, and thank you for having me on.
Well, if we can help sell just one book, it'll be a bloody miracle.
It will.
But,
but I really appreciate giving me the time, and thank you, and all the best to you guys with the podcast, which is going from strength to strength.
Yeah, thank you. Well, keep us posted how the book goes. And listeners, if you're listening and you're just go and buy it anyway.
By definition, the listeners are listening, Tom, aren't they?
Well, I think you may have made a leap there, Dave.
You don't understand how algorithms
shown your arrogance, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, Tim, you take care, mate.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, all the best.
Cheers, Tim.
Bye.
Well, how about that? That's somebody who has actually produced a
Brilliant.
book.
Oh, I'm so
But
chuffed for him.
do you know what I was thinking about today? And I got quite excited about it. Dave, you have actually written a book.
Yes, I have.
You've actually written a book, man.
I keep forgetting that. Yeah, I did. I wrote all the words of a book.
That is pretty bloody
His dad
impressive.
wrote half of it, but yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, it's a good point. I do often forget that because I haven't looked at it since then. That I should celebrate that.
Yes, you should. It's very nice. Having talked about it for quite a long time, it's very nice to actually get to share.
Well, this is the thing. Yeah, so today is the
Finally.
day of judgment.
It's the great reckoning.
Yeah.
Picked apart John's tree book. We've torn shreds out of Tom's silly little sales book. Now it's my turn, isn't it? So you both actually read it, like all completely
All
read
the
it,
way through.
every word.
Yeah. I read it in 2 days, Dave.
Did you?
Probably, yeah.
Whoa.
And I have to say, in terms of fiction books, it's probably my favourite that I've read this year.
Whoa.
High praise indeed.
That's incredible. Before we say any more, I just think we need to listen to this little ditty. Well, what do we have here? It's Dave's spooky war book, but the question that he fears is it any good? Imagine how he's feeling now, reeling now, kneeling on the floor, frozen to the core, and the power that we hold on him is boldening a golden scimitar that might just fall on the dreams and end them all. Or will we be humane and minimize his pain? Open up a bottle of metaphorical champagne, or should we maybe try to make poor David cry in an aim to intensify our content?
So yeah, nervous times, Dave. Nervous times
my God.
indeed.
I am literally drunk on the power at the moment. Do you feel that too, Tom?
Well,
I feel
Yeah.
like a god.
If
Do
I
you know
had
what I
something
mean?
constructive to say, I think I probably would feel like that. Yeah.
I think you should. Could you add some like massively awesome effects to our voices to make us sound like gods, to make us sound like Zeus?
Yeah, so we can
For
be
the-
like a bit more. Dave, we have come before you to tell you how good or bad your book is.
oh my God.
Come here, Dave. Come here. Don't be daunted, my boy. Come and grovel before us.
You make a bit of a creepy god. You make a bit of a creepy god. It's very,
It really
very
is.
1980s Catholic Church kind of thing going on there, John.
It's time to bestow upon you the benefaction.
No. With this finger. No, John, no.
Yeah, okay. Good stop
Yeah,
that.
let's just be.
Can you make us sound like chipmunks instead? That's a lot funnier.
I'm not
Let's
just
do that.
changing everything just for
Yeah,
your own
let's do
amusement.
that. Can you make me sound
Fine,
like
you
a
can have it.
chipmunk just for this bit?
Go on then.
And then I can keep that voice for the rest of the
But
podcast.
right.
Oh, I was enjoying that.
Dave, have you read your book?
No, I haven't. I deliberately haven't read it because I wanted to get a bit of actual real feedback because
Yeah.
I've been wrapped up in this book for that must be the last 3 years, and I'm actually nervous but excited. Maybe you could call it nervous excitement.
Do you know what we should do, actually? Before we go into it, give people a little flavour of it. Maybe you could read us a little
Oh, yes,
snippet.
please.
Okay, here we go. Thursday, October 22nd, 1914. Corporal Ray Childs coughed and spat out dirty, solid lumps of something truly awful as great clouds of dust and mud rained down into the trench around him. To his left, someone screamed in pain, though, with all distinguishing features caked in muck and the air thick with smoke, it was hard to tell exactly who. It occurred to Ray that, should the next bullet have his name on, no one would even recognize his corpse. Looking down, he caught a brief glimpse of 2 faded stripes on his arm. At least, when they buried him, they'd know his rank. Ray grimaced at the memory of his recent elevation to corporal. In peacetime, a promotion was something to be celebrated, something you work towards, strive to achieve and get rewarded for your efforts. In war, it just meant the bloke before you was dead. "After you sew these on, give yours to Private Miles," Company Sergeant Major Weston had said as he slapped the ragged pair of corporal stripes into Ray's outstretched hand. "We're in this shit up to our ear-holes, me babby, so just do it." 1st Battalion, the Gloucestershire Regiment, the old 28th, was a battalion of regulars, making the junior NCOs junior in name only. Some had over 20 years' service, many of them in India and South Africa. Ray himself had been the regimental boxing champion back in India. It was a glorious life, but it was fast becoming a distant memory. Here, in the trenches near Langemarck in Belgium, the German assault was heavy and unrelenting. Even though the British fire cut them down in swathes, the enemy was getting closer. Each time they charged, there were fewer men in Ray's company left to stop them. As another surge approached, Ray could do nothing but fall back on his training and blast away at 15 rounds a minute. Or thereabouts. There was no time for counting. Just load 2 5-round clips into the magazine, slam the bolt home, and fire. Every time he slid back the bolt, another glittering, smoking brass case would drop to his feet. The trench floor was littered with them, and with the whole battalion blazing away at the same rate as Ray, they were making it difficult to move about. Or they would have, if they'd been anywhere to go. The constant hail of bullets pinging off metal or thudding into mud made moving about the exclusive reserve of the foolish or the brave. CSM Western was one of those, though Ray would not dare to suggest which. Back in India, recruits and hardened regulars alike would turn into sweating, shivering wrecks just at the sound of the CSM's boot heels crossing the parade ground behind them. Here, though, the rumble of gunfire was a much more threatening sound. Weston brushed the waxed ends of his thick grey moustache away from his dry mouth as he gazed impassively at the horrors around him. His world stretched only as far as he could see, and his boys could shoot. But in that small radius, he was the absolute power. In defiance of the guns blaring around him, he bellowed some well-rehearsed and much-needed words of encouragement to his flagging men. "Neither kings nor queens nor royal marines, but brass before and brass behind. We fear no foe of any kind. Old Brags, pour it on! Pour it on, my babbies, pour it on!" With head held as high as he dared, he prowled the length of his ever-reducing company line. Every time he came across a man who would fear no foe forevermore, he knelt and rifled the corpse's pouches for ammunition. Any that he found, he handed to the men still standing, slapping a clip or two down onto the trench edge by the man's right elbow. Even over the incessant roar all about him, Ray heard Weston's approach. "That's the way, my babby! Pour it to 'em! Aim for their bollocks!" Ray couldn't help but grin. This was why the men loved their CSM, almost as much as they feared him. "Aim? I ain't got time to aim, you daft bugger," he muttered as he stripped 2 more clips into the magazine. "In a minute, I won't have nothing to aim with." His ammunition pouches were empty, and the cotton bandolier that lay on the churned earth beside him was feeling very flat. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a big, heavy hand slam a fistful of clips onto the ground by his elbow. Ray looked up to see Weston grinning down at him and reached out to grab one. At that moment, his rifle was torn from his grasp and a halo of glowing sparks enveloped his head and shoulders. A stunning thump on his forehead swept off his cap and, as Ray reeled to his right, he saw Weston lying against the rear wall of the trench, blood pouring from his face. A German bullet had hit Ray's bayonet, the steel dissolving in a shower of flying sparks and shrapnel. One of the splinters had dug into the neck of the Sphinx on his cap badge, deadening its force, almost certainly saving his life. A bigger, sharper sliver whirled past his head and sliced open Weston's left cheek. The CSM dug his boot heels into the trench floor and refused to fall. He clasped at his cheek with both hands, trying to hold back the blood and stop his face from falling apart. Instinctively, Ray reached out an arm towards the wounded man, only for it to be slapped away by a bloody fist. As his help was obviously not wanted or needed, Ray reached up to examine his own wound. All his nervous fingers found was a small but prominent bump just below his cap badge. The euphoric feeling of not being dead was fleeting, but intense. And in that moment when the swell of adrenaline caused the whole world to temporarily slow to a crawl, Ray couldn't help but notice that as well as slicing through his face, the bayonet had also removed the wax tip of Weston's moustache. And then, the body's self-administered drugs wore off, and the horrors of war returned.
Lovely, brilliant. Yeah, good.
Very nice, beautifully read as well, Dave.
So, fire away, guys. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, go on then.
You sure?
Shall we start with some? We got some overviews. Have we got some kind of?
Yeah, I was just going to
General.
say.
Put it in the form of a shit sandwich. So start with something good, a little bit of good at the end, and then fill it in the middle.
Think of something else good for the end.
Hang on.
How do you feel about open sandwiches?
Yeah, a nice Scandi sandwich.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed reading it, Dave. I thought it was really good. And that sounded really disingenuous, but it was genuine.
I really enjoyed reading it.
I think one of the hardest things to achieve in writing is getting the reader to actually care about the characters. But I really did. I really cared. And I think that's the thing that makes you want to read on, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? If you don't care about the characters, you're not going to keep turning the pages.
Yeah.
So that is a big old tick in a box right there.
And I think they were quite well defined as well.
Yeah.
Because I really struggle with following who's who in books and films and anything really. But I had a pretty good grasp of who was who. And when you think it's in 3 different times as well.
Yeah.
Keeping tracks of who's...
I see. I struggle with that as well. So I cut a few characters out.
Oh, that's interesting.
The original thing as well.
I think it may have been better for that.
Yeah,
I think,
definitely.
Yeah, it felt like there was a lot of people in it.
Yeah, there are a lot of principal characters, aren't there, for a relatively short book?
Yeah.
But yeah, you did that thing that Neil Gaiman suggests, which is to give all your characters a funny hat. Like just one thing to visualize them and remember who they are. So you've got is it Weston has his big moustache, and Albert's little, and Tom is massive, and all those kinds of things. You can picture them, and I think you need to be able to do that when you've got lots of characters.
Yeah.
So that was good.
Tick
Very
column.
good.
Right. Yeah. Good. Next.
Do you want to hear some things of particular note?
Why not?
Yeah. Okay.
Let's go through them one by one.
Do you know what I really liked, which may surprise you? It probably won't surprise you, actually. But I really liked, speaking of love stories, I really liked the love story thread with, is it Rose and Tom?
Yeah.
And I want to come back to that, actually, and talk about it in a bit more detail. So if you could remind me later,
Okay.
I'll come back to that.
All right.
I really particularly loved the scenes in the First World War. In that sort of classic Bairdy way, they managed to be quite tense but also funny, and sometimes in the same paragraph. They're sort of comic and tragic at the same time.
Yeah.
It's sort of sublime to the ridiculous, isn't it?
Happenstance and just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And something ridiculous happens, but it's actually quite sad.
But funny, yeah.
I thought that was done really well. Do you know what I thought about it's really hard writing across 3 distinct different time periods. Not even just keeping track of characters and where they are and who they knew and whether they're dead or whatever the things are. But just I thought you encapsulated the times of them very well. They were written in different colours, if you like, different film grains, kind of just the little tiny bits that just picked them out for where they were. You could really sense the times, how dirty and awful the World War One. Everything was grimy and
the way people spoke as well.
Yeah. I think it was captured really well.
It felt very
really
real.
well.
Oh, that is good. Because I put quite a focus on that. I had sort of music and movies in my head for like the 1989 part. Do you know what I mean? So I tried to have like a specific thing in my head to remind me, okay, this is in this time and that's in that time. So
do you know what I really liked as well? I felt that if it was a film, one of the great bits about films that are set in different times is revisiting the same physical place in those different times.
Yeah.
And I thought you did that really well with the town square and the town as well.
Yeah.
You could kind of sense it was the same but different. Or, that pub wasn't there anymore, but it was kind of...
The detail of those war scenes, they're so well told. I feel like they're very well researched. Yeah. I'm guessing that was your dad.
Your dad is a good writer, Dave, is what we're saying.
I'm guessing it was your dad who did the research. Would that be right?
Yes, I did some sort of skim researching.
Yeah.
But yeah, my dad's a sort of very keen military historian.
We could tell the bit. You could tell how it kind of went from like mentioning the exact model of tank and stuff, and then where you felt there needed to be something over, and then he shooted him with his big shooty rifle, and then it would go back into good descriptions of exactly.
And he did the clicky thing with the gun, and the bullets popped out. No, it was very good. If I was wondering, are some of those stories from family members or anything? Are they they're not like ancestors' war stories have been passed down?
No, I don't think so. No, not as far as I know. Like some of the names are sort of linked to old family members. But no, I don't.
They felt like they were from experience.
Well, do you know what? That was something else I really liked, though, because I think that comes out of what I'm about to say, doing this really well. In the war stuff, there was a brilliant balance of the bigger picture, the big war, the war going on around everyone, but then really focusing in on the individual and how it was affecting this group of 5 or 6 people within that. And there was mentions of everything else going around it, and it was all there, and the Great War was happening. But you got this very individual.
Yeah.
And I think in some of the writing, you even kind of fence them off a little bit in the writing sometimes in the situation, and it really worked in terms of, again, drawing you into. You understood how hopeless it was and how big it was, but then how individual this moment that's happening now for them was life or death was happening to them.
Yeah.
I particularly liked Ray's character. I thought he was really compelling. He was complicated, and his story is so heartbreaking. But it's also, I thought, really believable psychologically. You know, his well, I don't want to give it away, but I thought his character was particularly interesting.
It's all right. No one's ever going to read it.
Very, very good. Also, I should mention as well, Dave, as we all know, you have a particular brilliant comic flair, and there are some really lovely little funnies in it. There are some nice little passing references to the 80s. We were talking about the sort of time period thing, but I think you described the fact that Jason is puny by comparing his weight to a bag of Space Raiders. I thought there are lovely little flourishes like that really lift the book.
The Rambo burger, the local fish and chip shop doing themed burgers.
But yeah, excellent, really good.
Yeah, and generally throughout, just nice, gentle touches of description.
Yeah, they don't feel superfluous either. They feels like they're not just there to amuse you. They kind of fulfill a purpose. You know, they bring the character along as well.
That's good, because that was like the main thing of it. Because Dad's sort of original draft of it, it kind of felt at times like there were lots of different stories happening, and they would just seem to be a little bit sort of too disparate. And my main focus was to try and get those stories across in a way that tied together nicely, that like worked as a story in some way.
Was it still effectively the same story? It was still Jason in the 80s.
No. So
was that your bit that you laid on?
Yeah. So Jason was like the catalyst. Like him visiting his gran was the catalyst for her to start talking about Ray and Tom, and then Albert comes in, and that's the beginning of the stories. And then Jason basically went home, and all the stuff at the end happened with the two old people dying, and and then the ghosts and all that sort of stuff. Jason had gone by that point.
Right. Okay.
So the biggest issue with it was that, again, not to give too much away, but Bicky and the gang accidentally kill these two old people, and then in the original draft, these ghosts turned up and mercilessly chased them down and killed them in cold blood, which I thought was a little bit pushing it a bit. So I wanted to put Jason in there, keep him as like the focus, so that like the idea was that if the gang kidnapped him, then there was a reason for them to be pursued, if you see what I mean. It wasn't just chase these people down and kill them at any cost.
That's interesting,
So,
Do
you know what I thought was interesting? And I don't know if it's because I've only sort of read through it properly once and I've not picked up on stuff, was how separate he kept the supernatural stuff. It could have, about 3/4 of the way through, it could have finished without any supernatural stuff and still been a really good story.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of, reminded me in a way of From Dusk Till Dawn, in a way. Completely different. But that kind of, just like, there's just a point in it where it's like, oh, hold on a minute. Here we go.
Yeah.
And it just kind of started happening.
It's the phone, isn't it? It's the fact that Rose reaches the phone is the first real clue, I think.
Yeah, that there's something real.
Yeah,
happening.
that's a little. That's something else that I really struggled with in it, because it was in the original draft. They just suddenly turn up at the end and then they're gone again. And
yeah.
It was like, so I wanted to put a few little drips in there, like you're right, like with the phone, like a little suggestion of something a bit strange. But then I was trying to work out a way to keep them totally separate, and I don't want to give that away. I don't know if you noticed a particular thing about the ghosts and their interactions with the people.
Without giving it away.
I can't. Yeah. Oh, I don't know whether to say it or not.
I don't know without you telling us. I don't know whether I noticed it or not.
Did you notice? All right. Did you notice that they don't actually touch?
Yeah.
They don't touch anyone or anything.
Yeah, I totally noticed that. Yeah.
Oh right, yeah.
So that was a kind
I didn't notice it like as I was going through and think, oh, hold on a minute.
Well, that was another decision that I made, because in the original version they could actually inflict.
They could move stuff.
Yeah, they could move stuff, and they could actually hurt people. That was it was a deliberate decision to make it so that they didn't, so that you could remove them from it completely, and everything that happens could be explained in another way.
Yeah. The Tom and Rose thing. Coming back to that.
Coming back to Tom and Rose, back to the romance.
I like
John
a love story.
comes back to the romance.
Yeah, I like a love story. And
so John's wondering, would it be better if Rose was a tree, or maybe a rose bush? Because that would be easy to change if she was just you just have to put the word bush in
just
after Rose.
Little
every time you mention Rose.
Rose bush.
I really liked that relationship, and there wasn't a lot in there. There's that brilliant bit where Tom goes to see Rose
when
in the
he
war,
comes home.
which I thought was lovely.
Yeah.
It's just a proper standout, little scene. I thought it was great. But I thought there was so much potential in their love story, and it was so good. I wanted more, and it was like that subplot was so kind of short-lived and not expanded on. And I get the reason for that is because unless you want a much longer book, then you're having to fit in a lot of characters. You've already got a lot of characters for sort of a relatively not a short novel, but it's relatively short, isn't it, for that many characters and that subject matter. But I thought, could you maybe simplify the story? I thought that maybe there's a way of simplifying the story and making it more powerful, making that love story more powerful. And I had a thought for what I think might be a good way of doing that.
Go on, John.
But obviously, I'm just going to throw this at you and see if you like it or not. But because we were talking about getting rid of some of the characters, I thought because you've got quite a lot in there already, obviously the more characters you have, you're sort of spreading how much you invest in the characters more thinly in some ways.
Yep.
And I was wondering if you could amalgamate Ray and Tom.
Do you know?
Which doesn't immediately sound like a brilliant idea, but I think you could do it to make more room for Tom and Rose's story. Because I thought you've got Tom, you could have Tom as the guy who's basically sending people home from the front, but he never gets to go home himself. And I thought that could make that relationship even more kind of heartbreaking. And also when his ghost is present in Rose's life, it would be much more kind of stirring. It'd be more of a gift because they didn't get to spend enough time together, if that makes sense.
It's interesting you say that, John, because I have thought about that. I did wonder if it was just a little bit too confusing to have so many different characters from the war.
Mm.
Yeah, I have thought about that. That's interesting you say that.
But I think to have Tom as that character, because obviously it's Rose who has a very strong relationship with her brother Ray. But couldn't she have that with? Do you know what I mean? It could work.
Yeah.
Could
No,
work
absolutely.
really well. And actually, Ray's character is so brilliant if you sort of transpose that onto Tom, because Tom is a little bit of a vacuum, isn't he?
Yeah, there's not much of Tom in the. So there's like a couple of bits, but yeah, you don't really. There's no sort of stories of Tom actually in the war.
Yeah, he's sort of a big. Yeah,
he's got
a big passionate man.
Less dimensions to him. Than some of the
Where
others.
did you get the idea for a massive man mounting called Tom? By the way?
That one definitely is down to my dad.
Okay, but yeah, just a thought there.
No, it's interesting. I've been thinking about that. Yeah, that could definitely work. But this is what I wanted to hear, you see, because like I said, I've been so close to it that one of the hardest parts was working out which things to take out, which to leave in, which to change. Obviously, because my dad, it was my dad's idea. So, but to have that sort of,
because I think you could argue you might be able to do the same with the mafia, as they call themselves.
Yeah, make that simple.
Yeah,
as well.
I think I cut like 3 of them out already. But I think there are. Because there's a few of those that don't really.
They don't do anything
much.
that they couldn't do if they was merged
just
into
3 of them or something.
Yeah.
If there was just 3 of them, just the twins and Bicky kind of thing, maybe, or something.
Yeah.
I think it's just the bits when, as an outsider, when you're reading through it, where you just, like I said, I'm not particularly good at following characters all the time, so I'm maybe not the best person to. I'm kind of like the worst case scenario test for this. But there was bits where you had to kind of think, which one's that one? During rather than just I had you off the run of reading it, of getting lost in it.
No, absolutely. Because when I was writing that part of it, I had to draw myself a little map of like who's where, which one's where. He goes up that way, they go that way, this one goes that way. So it worked. So I cut a few out, but you're right. I think it probably
be brutal,
slim down even more. Yeah. That's the hard part. It's being brutal about it and saying, right, this bit I like this bit and it's nice, but it's not adding anything to the story.
Yeah.
Those are the bits that I really need to slice out. And like you say, that then leaves more room to develop the characters a bit.
Because really, how many subplots can you cope with in a book? I don't know what the answer to that is at all.
No.
But interestingly, it brought up very interesting questions for me about collaboration, because it firstly made me think what a difficult job it is to work on someone else's story Do you know what I mean? Rather than work alongside someone,
Yeah.
which is kind of what we want to
Yeah.
do for the poker night thing. You're taking the raw material
Yeah.
and trying to work on that. And I think that's it's a really difficult thing to do.
It is because it's destructive, isn't it, by its nature? Literally, you are having to destroy, to remold it and rework.
And
it.
that was a question I was going to ask you, actually, because I was thinking, presumably you're trying to stay true to your dad's vision of the book to a certain extent. But then I was thinking, maybe you're not. I thought, actually, that is a good question for you. Are you trying to take his existing material and rework it sort of fully into your own vision, or are you trying to stay much more true to your dad's vision of the book?
So originally, what I wanted to do was take as much of Dad's book and just reorder it and change it so that it actually worked as a single story. But I wanted to keep as much as possible. So what I did was, I don't know if I mentioned this before, what I did was I took every chapter and every scene that in Dad's book, wrote those down on little cards, and then spent ages trying to reorder the cards and put them in sort of some sort of shape. And then that meant that because I'd moved stuff, I had to write new bits to fit in between. And I tried to do it so that it sort of alternated pretty much between then and now and then and now. But I do think I need to get rid of more of the original material.
Okay, I'm gonna push you on the question now, Dave. Like Jeremy Paxman.
Answer the question.
Answer the question. Are you trying to stay true to your dad's vision of the book, or are you trying to rework it into your vision?
I think what I need to do is rework it into my vision, because what I'd really been trying to do before, I think I'd been sort of stuck between two worlds of trying to keep too much alive of the original vision.
Okay, yeah. Because that's exactly what I was going to say. I think those two things might potentially be completely different books and possibly mutually exclusive, maybe. And I say that partly because I think there are also, it seems like there are aspects of the story that, philosophically even, I wouldn't necessarily attribute to you. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? It's like a sort of an ideological thing.
What, like a bunch of ghosts mercilessly hunting down some young people and murdering them in cold blood?
Yeah, I think so. I think, because partly it's a kind of a pro-war book. And I don't mean that as a criticism, because there are lots of good pro-war. I don't mean it's pro-war as in it's hooray for war, isn't war great? I mean that it's like there's I don't know. It's like I think it's in the pride for the military and all that kind of stuff. And its message is very. What am I trying to say here? It's a sort of pro-war book, and it didn't quite feel like you. Maybe I don't know.
Hey, but there lies a very interesting question, though, John. Does an author have to write their own? Are they always trying to use it as a novel as a vehicle for their own thoughts and values, or does the story embody its own space?
I don't know. If they're not, what are they doing?
Well,
is it an absolute necessity for doing that, or is it?
No, I don't think in the characters. I don't think it is specifically in the characters, but I think the overriding message, it has to be yours, doesn't it?
I don't know.
I don't necessarily think it has to be yours, but I think it has to be clearly defined in your head, and I think that's the problem
thing.
Is that there isn't like a clearly defined vision.
English teacher's worst nightmare.
It really is.
I don't think that does mean that.
It's such a mix of different things. I think I spent so long to mould it into a story that works in some way, mould it into a narrative.
Yeah.
That now is the time to go back. Because in many ways, even though it took a bloody long time, it really is just the first draft that's actually been finished. So now that's sort of down there, now's the time to go back and actually mould it a bit more into something that's a bit more, has a sort of clear vision.
I think that's exactly right. It feels like that. It feels like there are such lovely, well-written bits in it, and it just feels structurally like it's not, I don't know, and ideologically like it's not you somehow. It doesn't sound like you. But that's because it's your dad as well. So it's inevitably going to be difficult and complicated.
It is, isn't it?
It's a really interesting one.
Because the question
so
is, would you have known that if you didn't know the origin of the book?
I would have been surprised, definitely.
Yeah.
And I say that particularly, do you know the thing that really surprised me the most? And I don't know whether I should ask you well, the character that dies at the end, and we were sort of joking about the fact that he's mercilessly sort of hunted down and killed.
Yes.
Just that idea there is obviously to a certain extent problematic. I always struggled to get behind the idea that people are kind of born with some innate evil in their soul. Do you know what I mean? Like the idea that bad people deserve what they get. And I imagine you feel relatively similar. That you believe in causation. There are greys, there's black.
Yeah,
there's
but
black, white,
but
there's
this is
grey.
also why, that's why I think I can't remember now. I think that's why I had to make sure that happened. That Ray was the one who was present when that happened.
It's a sort of vengeful act.
Yeah, because Ray is he's the sort of one who's totally sort of lost any sort of sense of sort of morality or ethics. It's just about the enemy and the family, friends, and enemy, and this guy's an enemy.
Yeah.
So for him to be there when Vicky, at the end, that's what I was trying to sort of get across there. So I know what you're saying, John, about it like being a sort of vision of the author. I don't necessarily think that has to be
No,
the
but that
case.
wasn't the biggest problem with it. The biggest problem for me, and it's so hard to talk about and not give it away, but it was the fact that the other character just walked away.
Oh,
do you know what I mean?
Jason,
because I wanted that should have been his moment of transformation. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like he has this moment where he stops glorifying the war and he goes, the right thing to do at this moment is to help this kid, despite who he is, despite the terrible things he's done.
John? That's yes.
And that is what makes him the hero. And that's like his moment of salvation. As everyone's salvation in the book of this spotty little kid is actually better than everyone else. Because he did what he believed was right, even though he could have been vengeful and he could have been, full of righteous fury.
That's actually a really good idea.
Yeah.
John.
So it becomes about his compassion.
Yeah, because I was thinking about this earlier on about, the sort of the journey, the sort of character arc sort of bit with Jason being the main character, that he doesn't really have much kind of learning as such or change.
Yeah, that's right. And if you think about the Will Storr thing about his, what is his flawed psychological belief system? And it's not clear at the moment. But I think if it was like this sort of glorifying of the war, this sort of obsession for revenge, maybe, I don't know. But maybe he realizes that that's his strength. It's not being armed. It's not being bigger or stronger than the next guy. It's just being kinder or something. I don't know. Sounds a bit schmaltzy now, doesn't it? But
no. But I think that does work. Because originally, I think I cut all reference to it out. But originally, I had this idea that Jason's dad would have died in the Falklands,
right,
or something like that. I don't think I actually mentioned that, but
I don't think it is mentioned, yeah.
So that he has some sort of personal connection to the army, which is why he wanted to be in the. So he has that.
Of course, it does totally mess up the whole police body found in the quarry thing. That's the only problem.
Yeah, but
I don't know. Anyway, totally give you some work.
So when you're starting the rewrite, Dave?
Once you tell me what you think,
I haven't
Tom.
got that much to say about it, really. I enjoyed it for what it was. And I actually had a sort of a broader thought about the idea of editing and critiquing and what have you. How it's actually really hard because it exists as it is, finished as it is, if you like. Obviously, you can continue to change stuff until the cows come home.
And it's a really enjoyable story anyway, isn't it?
This could be a really good example and test bed for paying a professional editor to have a look at it and see what you can get back from that.
Yeah.
I think with so many different threads and the 3 time zones and the characters and stuff, I think it would be very, very easy to spend a lot of rewrites going around in lots of different circles, none of which may be better or worse than the other. They just happen to be the next one that you're doing, and never really knowing when you should have stopped or what. And not throwing the baby out with the bathwater and leaving something that you've got now that they get rid of, and then later on it's just not there to be put back in, if you like, by someone.
For me, I think it's got I think Bairdy's a good enough judge, without a doubt, and a good enough writer to do a read-through, just because you haven't done it for so long, because it's been sat. You've shelved it for a good long time. I think you'll see it objectively, and I think it's worth a rewrite, having seen it for the first time in a while, and then do that. That's what I reckon.
I'd agree with that.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I need to, because I think I haven't looked at it since the end of October. So yeah, I think.
I mean, the great news I don't think there was anything. There was no gaping holes in it.
That's
Do you know what I mean?
that's the main thing.
This just doesn't work. Do you know what I mean? Which is almost the first worry, isn't it? After like a first draft, as it were, that it's like, well, why have you mentioned this guy? here?
Yeah.
He's literally not there, or he's a different. He's the brother of someone there, and then he's not even. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Worse than
true.
that,
That's
it's just
true.
boring.
Yeah.
And it's not boring at all.
Well, that's good. So I wanted it to be not boring, and I wanted it to, in some way, make sense as a
tick
you know,
tick.
as a
Yay.
story. Yeah, but that's what I wanted to like. Because, like I said, when you're in something for so long, you start to lose any rationality of whether anything makes sense or not.
totally,
It just becomes words all put together.
Yeah.
So to know that you've read it from start to finish and it actually kind of makes sense as a story.
Do you know
to
what I think was
follow.
good as well? Speaking about pulling you through and wanting to read it was with the different time zones. I found myself quite often wanting to go back to find out what's happening in that time. What's happening in 1989 now? Come on. And I'd be reading and still enjoying the 1914 or whatever stuff. But think, well, yeah, good. Let's get on with this because I need to know. So where you'd left some of the little cliffhangers and stuff obviously worked pretty well, I think, in terms of dragging the story through and keeping that momentum.
And you led them on really nicely as well, like at the end of each chapter. Yeah.
I absolutely stole that from Kaz Tudor. So I've read a few of her books, and a lot of those take place in two different time zones. So when I read them, I thought, oh, this could work for this. And what she does brilliantly is at the end of every chapter, there's just like a little cliffhanger that makes you go, oh, I want to know what happens next.
It's not completed. It's not finished.
Yeah.
You can't just,
And you're desperate to know what happens next then, but then you've got to go back 20 years to find out what happened. And then you get to the end of that bit and you go, oh, I want to know what happens after that. And then you move to another.
But then you get into the other bit, oh, good, happening. Oh, that ties back in with that. See why they did that now.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's great stuff.
Very satisfying. Yeah, so you have to finish this book, Dave.
Wow.
It is a belter. It's great. It's moving. It's compelling. It's well written.
I think it's fair to say, even in its current form, there's a host of worse books published. Do you mean that people have finished?
Yeah.
They think they've finished.
Yeah.
And are on Amazon to buy.
That's an encouraging thought.
You just need a bit of time now.
Gonna get another few years.
No,
but I'm looking forward to getting back into
Good.
it. I wanted to hear what you guys had to say first, and then my plan is go back, read it, and then give it another draft through, and then I'm going to start doing something with it.
Nice.
Well, thanks, chaps. If you got anything else to say,
for me. It was an absolute pleasure, mate.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Really
good.
enjoyed it.
Well, I'm glad.
Really enjoyed
If
it.
nothing else, Tom, I've got you to read a book.
Yeah.
So
How about
I
that?
know.
yeah.
What an achievement. So, there you go.
Wasn't that bad in the end, was it? Wasn't really anything
No.
to be worried about. Oh, we've all now critiqued each other.
Shared something.
The
Yeah.
Holy Trinity. Yeah.
well done, chaps.
Now we need to get on, write those things, finish those things, and get on with our collaborative
Yes, we
effort
do.
as well.
Our two collaborative
Yeah.
efforts.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
The
we've started
book.
another one, haven't we?
And the sitcom.
Yeah. Well, I've actually got a couple of days off, so I'm going to do some writing in the next few
Okay.
days.
Brilliant. So, what have we got next week?
Anyone got
We've got
anything that they
anything next
want
week?
the other two of us to rip apart?
Do you know what we said we were going to do? Do you know what we were going to be brave enough to do? But we've basically kind of go, oh yeah, we'll do that at some point, and never really got round
What's
to it because
that?
I think we're all a little bit scared of it. It came up a while ago. We said we would discuss bad writing.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Makes
But isn't that what we've just done?
no, yeah.
We're
So I
not
was
just-
gonna say that. What a beautiful link in from reviewing Dave's book.
Yeah, what constitutes bad writing?
Yeah, because it feels, as unpublished writers, it feels taking the piss of it, doesn't it? To go, oh, that's rubbish, that one, that you've actually got published and
Yeah.
finished. But I don't think that, I think you can criticise stuff and critique stuff, can't you? You don't have to have made a film
No,
to
I don't think so.
say a film's not good or is good or whatever, do you?
I also think it's interesting just talking about what constitutes
Well,
good or bad writing and who gets to police it
Yeah,
as well.
who gets to decide? Yeah.
Yeah, well, yes, but also sometimes it can be a good way. It's like the negative view. You know, a good way to see what makes good writing is to see, what makes bad writing, and then do the opposite.
And a
of
lot
that.
of the books that are accused of being really badly written are some of the most popular books
Well, that's the other.
on the planet.
Yeah, that's the other side of the coin, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
can they be that bad?
You're talking
I
about
don't know.
Dan Brown.
That kind of
John.
thing. Yeah, there is.
I'm talking about lots of things.
Because there's a lot of people that
The-
rip
Oh, it's
into. I mean,
terrible.
Shades of
terrible.
Grey and
Yeah.
and the Twilight series and stuff like that. They're quite often sort of mentioned.
Yeah. So let's have a chat about that next week. We'll dust off the books
Yeah.
that we bought each
Yeah,
other
cool.
that were supposedly famous, badly
Okay.
written books.
We'll have a little look through
I'm going
them.
to get that off the bookshelf right now. When you say dust off, mine is very dusty, like incredibly
probably is
dusty.
Dave hasn't done
dusty
his
as well.
dusting for weeks.
So, if you're listening to this and you know someone who's shit at writing, mention it to them. Say, "Oh, hey, you're shit at writing. You should listen to the Failing Writers podcast next week. They're talking about stuff like your
They
stuff."
might mention you.
Get mentioned.
Yeah, you're going to be on.
So, yeah, great stuff. Yeah, spread the word.
But we should say, before anyone writes in to complain, we're doing it all very much in the safe and certain knowledge that none of us have ever published anything. So we're
Yeah,
we're not the arbiters of what's
absolutely
good and
not.
bad.
It's
No,
it's an open
absolutely.
discussion. Open discussion.
Yeah, exactly. What better way could we pitch it than saying tune in next week to listen to the failing writers talk about bad writing?
Yeah.
What an enticement that is.
double one.
I'll be there.
Yeah. Well, better go and start reading then.
That's not much of an enticement, is it? Yeah.
Oh, God.
Go and read
No,
one of the
maybe
worst
not.
books ever written. Yeah, cool. Thank you. We'll do.
Take notes.
Well, thanks for today, chaps. It's been most
Oh,
enlightening.
thank you for sharing with us, Dave. It was
You're very welcome. Yeah, cheers, mate.
genuinely enjoyable. Really was.
I'll
Really
see
was.
you all next
Take
week.
care. Hello.
Hello.
Where's everybody gone?